Well, because of the fact that last video was a bit heavy on topic, honestly, it makes sense for it to have been a very heavy or very dense topic, or very, like, I don't know, low energy, depressing type topic. But that's kind of what you end up getting when you go into actually processing your trauma, and you have to go ahead and talk about things that you don't really like talking about, because it's essentially it's those things that tend to bring the mood down, or tend to bring your mood down, and I don't like it. I don't like either of them. Also, the amount of things that was specifically getting to me while I was filming and editing that video that week was strange. Then after posting that video, we end up having to go ahead and deal with presidential election week, which I am pretty sure everyone's tired of politics right now. So I'm going to try my best to do a more lighthearted video, but it's also still on topic with the trauma arc that I'm specifically working in. And the second thing that I have to specify is, while I did technically bring this topic up during the Discovery arc, I just had to remember the name of what I was talking about. While I did bring this topic up during the Discovery arc, and this is something I feel like should be in the Discovery arc, one, it took me a while to go ahead and be able to put it into words, and two, this is also technically a two-parter, where there's something that I would end up having to explain in a completely different video, just to make sure that I am not going off on a complete tangent in this one. One, to make it easier for me to edit, but two, also to make it a bit more cohesive. Now, during the Discovery arc, I was specifically pointing out a few of the labels that were placed onto me simply because of the lack of experience to say otherwise. For example, me being an introvert when it was literally me just being very picky with who I decided to speak to. Or me being neurodivergent. Like, the way that I think about the term introverted, it is typically one that feels comfortable with sticking to themselves or staying to themselves. The way that they usually explain introversion is someone that whose social battery charges while they're alone. And that's not the experience I have. But the thing that I wanted to talk about specifically in this video is actually just, I am a hopeless romantic. I didn't realize that until like a few years ago. And even then, it was very difficult for me to like be able to carry that label specifically, because I didn't really have the experience of a hopeless romantic. I don't have a line or a list of ex-boyfriends. But also, people just either viewed me as intimidating or didn't like me in that sense. And as I've explained before, I've only had like 2 questionable relationships at best. One, I didn't even know how we started dating. Heavy quotations on dating. It was 2nd grade. But the only thing I remember from it was how it ended. To a point where now it almost feels more like that was just a dream, and I've essentially been hating on this one person for years for no reason. Well, the second one specifically didn't go so well. I tried. He viewed me as naive or desperate. But that didn't mean I was not comfortable in cutting someone off. And that was the 9th grade issue. So like, I realistically am a hopeless romantic. I am a lover girl at heart. But I also don't really act like your typical hopeless romantic. Now, the main reason as to why that is, or at the very least, the main reason as to why I believe that is kind of a system that I specifically created to help organize this explanation. My lover side wasn't really able to properly show because my warrior side was the one that was essentially always at the ready. And it wasn't until I allowed said warrior side to rest that I was able to find the lover side within me. I'm going to there's an entire system, and again, I don't want to go ahead and try to explain it in this video because the system itself oh my gosh, words, requires for me to explain other things, and I don't feel like having to do that. So yeah, I'm a hopeless romantic. I love cheesy stuff. I love cheesy cliches. I also love cheese, but that's a completely different issue. So here are actually just a few things that I would want to share with people who are hopeless romantics. Essentially, these are things that I had to learn, but also had to figure out how to understand. And fully understand. The first one that I have written on the list is society will try to tell you to change. You are not the problem. This is something I would probably end up putting it in a video generalization. But the main reason why I feel like that one was specifically meant to be first is you have a lot of people that try to tell you that you need to be happy on your own and without being in a relationship, and completely forgetting that there are people out here that thrive off of that type of attention or thrive off of those types of connections. Then there are other parts of society that will try to take advantage of you being a hopeless romantic, a lover at heart. And then they go ahead and turn around and say, well, you should have. No. To be fair, it takes a certain type of courage to be vulnerable and to not have your guard up immediately when you meet someone. Apparently. I didn't recognize that because I didn't think it was something that needed bravery or confidence or courage or something like that. And it takes a certain type of mentality to take advantage of the other person's vulnerabilities. You do have to work on choosing and work on choosing wisely. But at the end of the day, if you feel like you make a mistake, it's not necessarily a bad thing. At the very least, it's a learning experience. The second thing is to balance the lover and the warrior. I spoke about this earlier, how, at least for me, my warrior specifically had been activated way before it needed to have been for proper integration or proper mental and emotional development. That essentially left my lover side alone. And stuff like that can actually cause toxic codependency traits to form. So this is the people pleasing that everyone talks about, but the more self-sacrificing people pleasing. Ripping parts of yourself away that it has been deemed undesirable or unaccepted just to be liked. But it's also what I realized I was doing, and it was chronic caretaking. It was also called people carer or people caretaker, where it's basically self-sacrificing through doing more for other people than they would do for you. But the second part of that is, again, keeping a certain balance between the two. Recognizing that there are times where you will have to give someone a chance to show that they can love you right, properly. I don't really have a better way of saying that, actually. Like, they can love you without hurting you in the process, or without you having to hurt yourself in the process. Like, the discomfort should be coming from them proving the warrior can rest, and not necessarily from showing that the warrior has to be on defense constantly. The third one, which I brought up earlier, you don't have to be a hopeless romantic to everyone just to be able to have that title. Again, I talked specifically about not having the experience, so not really putting myself under the label of hopeless romantic, but at the same time, I'm just a sucker for a happy ending where the two love interests finally get together and everything is essentially right in the universe. But then you have people in the real world that wants to go ahead and try to paint you as something you're not. Like, they see you as naive, so they try to take advantage of you, or they see you as very intelligent, and that type of intelligence itself intimidates them. I don't know, that's just a personal that might be a personal thing for me. And the fourth one kind of feeds into the second one, which is respect yourself first. A lot of people tend to say things like you can't love someone if you don't love yourself, and to some extent they're not wrong, but at the same time they're not explaining it properly. If you hadn't felt if you don't know what it feels like to love yourself, that's where you should start when it comes to it. Not necessarily looking for a relationship to go ahead and help fix you, but essentially to look at what you can do on your own, what you can process on your own. And if you end up finding yourself in a relationship within that, great, but you still have to do that work. You still have to do that internal work. Because a lot of people love to go ahead and essentially put that aside once they finally get their relationship. So respecting yourself is essentially recognizing where your boundaries are and working on feeling comfortable and feeling safe with putting those boundaries. And that comes through experience. But the second part of that is it will find you when you least expect it, which I understand is very irritating, because to some extent they're not wrong. The whole if you stop looking for it, it will find you, they are not technically wrong, but at the same time it also paints you as the issue in that situation. Like, oh, you're the one that's seemingly desperate for one. If you show that you're no longer desperate for one, you're going to end up finding one easily, and that's not the case. If you start having boundaries that you're not allowing just anyone to cross, or if you start moving about with your own personal values and you're comfortable within that, it actually shortens the potential suitors. Again, people love to go ahead and find themselves in relationships just to not have to do that internal work. To quote a song, we play games of love to avoid the depression. I've been here before and it sucks. So while I can't necessarily say anything else to make it suck less, at the very least, I am validating, yeah, it sucks. There's not really much that I can do about it though. But there is a silver lining to it. And it's not the whole, oh, be happy being single thing. It's more of a, will the heartbreak from dating the wrong type of person be worth the experience, or be worth not being alone or not feeling alone? I had personally gone through my own experience where I had to ask myself, is keeping this person in my life worth having to feel alone? Because it seemed like when I was talking to them, it's almost like I was talking to a brick wall. And it took me like a year to figure out that it's kind of because they couldn't see past their own issues. And that's where like that metaphorical gap became visible to me. So I literally had to ask myself, am I okay with constantly having to feel like I'm alone? Or do I want to let go of this relationship because I am no longer satisfied with it? And still have to deal with the feelings of being alone, but at the very least I could say I am alone. Like, it's not one of those, oh, I feel like I have no friends, and then you have like a group of people that are essentially saying, well, what about me? And it's like, yeah, what about you? I still feel alone. Like, at best, you're not always there. You're busy with your own life. And you getting butthurt because of what I said is not helping me in the slightest. I felt like that was a bit too personal for what was supposed to be a more lighthearted video, but at the same time, this is the trauma arc. This is kind of where I'm supposed to allow myself to essentially be vulnerable and talk about very personal experiences, while also keeping a whole, like, respect the other person and not specifying who it is if I feel like I don't have to. So yeah, generalization. There's nothing wrong with being a hopeless romantic. It's just when you allow that need to be in a relationship, mainly a romantic one, to put you in a position where you are self-sacrificing. Like, I do not remember labeling myself as a sacrifice. Because even in like Greek mythology, sacrifices were treated with way more respect. And that is pretty much all for today's video, this week's video. Join me in the next video where I actually explain where the whole lover side and warrior side came from, and a lot of other things I've found out with that specific analogy. Like, share, subscribe if you want. Toki out.